Welcome to today's episode of the E.N.G. Media Podcast. We have a very exciting guest, Julia with Glendor. For those of you just joining the podcast, I am Christian Gannon, the co-founder of E.N.G. Media, and we specialize in helping software and tech companies scale their revenue. So if you want to learn just how to take your software tech business to the next level, make sure to stick around. So let's get right into it. So I understand that Glendor is a cutting-edge health tech company tackling one of the biggest challenges in medical research, safely using big data without compromising patient privacy. As machine learning becomes increasingly essential for diagnostics, the presence of protected health information, PHI, and medical images makes data sharing difficult. To solve this, Glendor has developed PHI Sanitizer, an AI-driven on-premises solution that automatically detects, removes, and masks PHI from both images and metadata. Can you share more about your business and your roles within it?
Sure, Christian, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Of course.
Before we go into what we do and why we do it, let me paint you a bigger picture. So AI, everybody's now excited about AI, especially so-called LLMs, ChatGPT and others, and it holds a lot of promise. However, one thing to remember is that this ChatGPT and others were trained on publicly available internet data. That's a large volume of data which is readily available. And even that is not enough. And you're hearing from the founders that they're saying we need more data. Imagine how dire the situation is with AI in healthcare. Because unlike others, by definition, it's AI in healthcare, it has to be trained on healthcare data. And this data is highly sensitive and very personal because usually it's medical records. Just to see how sensitive this data can be, if we look at the dark web prices, this data is from 2018 survey, so it only went up. If somebody wants to buy a social security number, it will be 53 cents. If somebody wants to buy a healthcare record, it will be $250. And now I'm hearing even higher prices, so 500x. There is a reason for it, because the data that comes from healthcare is very sensitive. It's much more sensitive even than the credit reports and everything else, which, things change, things go up, things go down. With healthcare, if somebody had a childhood disease, that record will reflect it and that will stay with this person forever. So this is very sensitive data. As a result, AI cannot have access to it willy-nilly. The data has to be prepared and so-called de-identified or cleansed from anything private before it can be shared with AI. And that's the problem we're trying to solve. How to make it so that we can actually have AI and healthcare models that will be as successful as ChatGPTs of this world while still protecting patients' privacy. And that's the focus. So long story short, that's how Glendor, where Glendor comes in. In particular, our product, which is called Glendor PHI Sanitizer. And as it sounds, what it does, it sanitizes the data from PHI. And by data, I mean records, like EHR records, basically medical records, but more importantly, X-rays, CT scans, ultrasounds, video recordings like ours, audio, pathology reports, pathology imaging, etc. So the data, it's so-called multimodal data. It runs into quite a few different so-called modalities, meaning types of data.
Of course. Thank you for sharing, Julia. That's super insightful. And I think a lot of the viewers here aren't as educated. Definitely, I know I am not in the field. So it's awesome hearing that. And thank you for explaining that. And kind of moving into our first question, what are the major trends that you're kind of seeing right now in the medical data privacy space and along with AI? I know you shared a little bit about how important it is to really sanitize the data for consumer, like patients, like privacy, right? So on the other side, on the flip side, what's kind of happening in the market to shape that aside from Glendor?
Well, there are a couple of things which are happening in the market. And one of them is that there is a realization that if we want to have AI augment our healthcare professionals, we do have to have access to the data. We just don't have any other choice because the number of patients is growing by leaps and bounds. The number of, let's say, radiologists is not. It's actually shrinking or at least staying the same. So it's very important to have some other tools that will help us with healthcare needs, and that's AI. So AI in healthcare is something which is needed. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. At the same time, there is a realization from the hospitals and others that without actually contributing their data to the AI in healthcare, we are actually will be in trouble because those models will not work on us. If we look at the research done a couple of years ago in terms of where the data is coming from for AI, the map is very simple. It's California, East Coast, nothing in between, almost nothing in between. But most of us live elsewhere, right? We live in quite
Right.
different states. And if our data is not used, it will not be the models will not be applied to us as well.
Of
Okay.
course.
So that's the two major trends. AI is in health. To recap, AI in healthcare is here to stay. We cannot do without it. At the same time, there is a realization that we have to be taking part in it before the models are finalized and they won't be applicable to us.
Of course. And just to reiterate, so you said that a lot of the data comes from East Coast and California. So right now, there's a lot of missing links or pieces throughout the rest of the US that isn't getting applied to maybe
Absolutely.
lab proceedings and research data that is super important because not all of us live in California or the East Coast, right?
Yeah, precisely. And even if you look at California map, it sort of shows the entire California, but actually it's just the coast, the Bay Area, and the Southern California hospitals.
Wow, that's super insightful. I mean, I would have never thought about that. So that's awesome. And then a follow-up to that, in this kind of market shift and then this in these trends, what's making it easier for you to navigate on the flip side, maybe even harder to navigate with all of the new developments that have happened recently?
Well, that's a harder question to answer because for us, one of the biggest issues is the fact that this realization is changing the market. At the
Hmm.
same time, for example, if we want to go into more technical aspects of it, so the approach that we're using is so-called hybrid approach,
Of
which
course.
is which means actually that it's not necessarily just a particular model or machine learning or deep learning. It's a combination of multiple factors because, like humans, each approach has its pros and cons, and the goal with hybrid approach is to combine all of them together so that so that we can leverage their strengths and
Mhm.
compensate for their weaknesses. And as a result, we're in this wonderful position to be able to use all the latest approaches, all the latest decisions that have been come up with.
That's awesome. And thank you for sharing that. I think that that's super insightful. And I think not only just in the health industry, but other industries as well. I think it's kind of turning into a more technical aspect, like what you said, like almost a hybrid model. What can we use to help? And to
Mhm.
what limit can we use to help, right? Where how far is the technology advanced to
Yeah.
help us? And that's awesome. And right now, what does the current kind of competitive landscape look like for Glendor and the PHI sanitizer? Is there really any competition, or are you kind of a one-on-one in the market right now?
Well, there's always competition. If somebody says that we don't have competition, that means they don't have a market.
Of course, of course.
Well, there are large companies like Google. Google has an
Okay.
API for de-identification, but it's an API, which actually means that to different extents. But that means that if you're using an API, you're actually sending your data to a third party somewhere out there to be
Right.
processed, and the algorithm and developers will get access to this data, and that's actually very dangerous. So what sets us apart from Google API or AWS API is the fact that what we offer is not a service. It's a piece
Hmm.
of software which is
Okay.
run on customer premises. We as a company never see customers' data and would like to keep it that way. And that's the safest way, right? I shouldn't see your patient's data before or after processing. It shouldn't be my business to see it.
Of
Uh,
course.
at the same time, there's also in-house solutions. So one of the approaches is, if let's say you have, you can send, you need to send information about one patient. Then for that one patient, you can do it manually. It will take time, but you will do it manually. But let's say you want to send information about 1,000 patients. That doesn't scale. So in-house solutions, somebody doing it manually, that's another approach. There's another approach, which is called so-called templates.
Okay.
And by templates, what I mean is that if let's say everything is the same, like X-rays, and you know that all the sensitive information will always be in the upper left corner, you can remove that corner. That's actually a very dangerous solution because You cannot guarantee that the sensitive information only will be in that corner. And also, it's never is, because most time, if you've seen any of your own records, you will see your name and your sensitive information all over it. It doesn't have to be just one nice corner where everything sensitive is placed. So
Right.
that's another competition. So it depends on what we're talking about. Yes, of course, there are a lot of competition, but we'd like to think that we are doing better against every single one of them.
Of course. And I think that your differentiator is huge, right? Like as you explained, an API goes through multiple other
Yes.
people before it goes back to the end place that it needs to be, that data. And
Yes.
talking about a software in-house, especially when we're talking about breaking privacy laws, right? And health
Mhm.
data laws, like that's a huge differentiator between other companies and you,
Mhm.
right? So
Absolutely.
I'm very glad you shared that.
Mhm.
And so shifting a little bit, can you tell me what you are responsible for within Glendor and how your days typically on kind of unfold?
Well, I am the CEO of the company, which basically means that I'm doing everything that needs to be done,
Of
from
course.
being a janitor to sales. So it's hard to say, but the joke is that the CEOs usually do everything, or founders as well. So I can say it depends. It depends on the day as well.
Of course. You're
Like
wearing a lot of hats, I bet.
Yeah, like the next 48 hours will be interesting for some other reason, but we're exhibiting tonight. We're actually going to be at an all-day conference tomorrow where we're participating in a pitch. And then after I'm back from that conference at night, I'm actually a keynote speaker at a conference in Barcelona. So I will be in the middle of the night giving a presentation. Uh,
Wow.
so
That's awesome.
it's going to be fun.
It does sound like fun. I know, and I think a lot of CEOs would agree with you and founders. Like a lot of the time, owning an own company doesn't mean it's cut and dry, right? A lot of the time you have to adapt and make things
Yeah.
work, and it's kind of fun. I think that's the beauty of owning a company or being a founder of a company is that you're not doing one thing every day for 40 years, right? It's
Yeah.
doing something different. And it might be a little bit harder in the big scheme of things or more work, but I think
Yeah.
that's the passion that shows through.
Yeah.
And so a follow-up for you. So when it comes to measuring success, what financial or performance metrics matter most to your business right now? Is it revenue growth, profitability, kind of client retention, or maybe something else completely entirely?
So the most important issue for us is privacy protection,
Of course.
because we strongly believe that this is very critical. Our second most important thing is being able to give access to AI companies with data, right? Once the data is de-identified. So that's sort of the twofer. If I have to choose between the two, it will be the privacy. When it comes to business matrix, that depends on the stage of the company. For us, of course, it's so because the product is developed and we're already on the market. Our biggest and most important metric is sales,
Of
and the
course.
second one, exposure,
Of course.
like this podcast.
Of course. And that makes a lot of sense. And do you have a sales team right now? What does it kind of look like right now? Is it still being developed? It's still early
No,
stages.
we,
Would you
we do
say?
have a sales team.
Awesome.
You can't do everything alone.
No, no, but you just mentioned like, oh, you're going to the conferences. It just seems like you run a lot of it, and it seems like going from A to B is just, I guess, a growth. It's hard, right? So I just wanted to expand on it a little bit.
Well, what I was taught is that for at this stage, basically, CEO is one of the biggest sellers. You have to have
Of
founders as
course.
sellers this early in the company's growth.
Definitely. And I think it establishes a lot of authority in the market too, right? Being at the forefront of the sales ship, as we should say,
Yeah.
of just being talking to every client, talking to every new opportunity. I think that's a huge point. I think you're doing it exactly right. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
Of course.
Yes,
And
that's
look,
the idea.
of course. And looking ahead kind of for the next 12 months, what are some key goals or some key points that you'd be like, yeah, this is really what we wanted to hit, or this is what we hit, and I'm really proud of this, I guess.
Once again, I have more general goals, which is one of the things that I think is still needed is understanding of what PHI and how dangerous it is to share data willy-nilly. So I
Of
think for
course.
me that's one of the biggest goals, hence the presentations. For example, I'm doing another one, which is like a 2 hour presentation, nothing but PHI next week. So you can see the drift. In terms of the companies, of course, sales. What
Right.
else, right? It's
Of course.
the growing the company, getting this, hitting the sales numbers. So that's the biggest thing.
100%. I did want to touch on what you said about like the awareness. I think we had talked about before the podcast, like in the industry, and correct
Mhm.
me if I'm wrong, it's this kind of blasé attitude, right? Of it matters, but does it really matter? And how important is it really? And I think that's a big part of it is educating the customer base a little bit, right? Of how dangerous it could be.
Yeah, I had a very interesting conversation with a doctor. Um,
Hmm.
um, Here, a local doctor, I just, a regular checkup for a family member, and I was telling him that I'm going to present about PHI. He's like, "How boring." And we
Hmm.
started talking about the examples. That PHI is not just texts. It's actually something like when you're talking about X-ray, whether or not a pacemaker and their numbers, the numbers on that pacemaker are visible. Or even scarier, that brain MRI, it actually reconstructs the head of a patient. So you can actually recognize the patient. So all of this is, that's what we got into this conversation. And he said, "Oh, wow, I didn't realize." And he's in
Right.
healthcare. He's a
Of
really good
course.
doctor. It's just not his, his specialization. It's not something that he's interested in. And he said, "Oh yeah, absolutely, I would love to come for that presentation because it sounds like fun." So yes, that particular realization, um, I'm all for it, because we do need to think about it. And it's one of those, once you realize, it's very easy to be aware of it. It's just
Of
that
course.
awareness of it is not that there yet for a lot of people, and it should. And
Of
most importantly for patients, sorry to interrupt, most
definitely.
importantly for patients, think about where your data is coming. There's sort of a twofer, right? Think about
Hmm.
how your data is protected and whether or not it's de-identified whenever it's shared, but also at the same time, think about how you can share your data, because if your data is not shared, then those models might not even work for you. And I mean
Of
you
course.
in a general sense, right? Not a particular individual, but let's say groups.
Of course. And I guess when you're explaining this, like you're doing these conferences, you're doing these presentations, when is that light bulb moment for people? Is it 5 minutes in, they're like, oh, I didn't even realize this? Or is it kind of when you've explained it a little deeper and they really understand, like when we're talking about the MRI scans or things like that?
It depends on how good I'm at explaining, right?
Of course, of course.
So it's more like 5 minutes,
Hmm.
unless I am less my was it I'm really not not well prepared, and then it will be hour or maybe never. So
Fair
it's
enough.
a reflection of me rather than on them.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense. And so just to wrap up, this is my last question I have for you today. It's a fun one, but a little bit of a tough one. If you had a magic wand and you could solve just one problem within your business, what would that be?
That's a tough one. Can I have two magic wands?
Sure, if you want to choose
No,
to.
it's actually I don't think it's a question about magic. It's a question about
Hmm.
work, teamwork, working with clients. So I don't know, because it's not, I don't believe it will work. It's not something you can and then you're done.
Right.
So I wouldn't know.
It's maybe a combination of things, right? Like a combination
Maybe
of work to begin to get to a result, but the magic wand maybe doesn't apply in this
um,
scenario as much.
I would like to have a magic wand for time,
That would
because
be
it's the shortest resource. Because
100%.
so yes, okay, I'll take your magic wand. I'll I'll switch it. I'll swap it for time. It's
Extend the
much,
day 6 more hours.
yeah, or more, because then not only for work but for everything else.
Right, right. And I know that you kind of said that as a simple answer, but I think there's a lot of depth to that answer in all honesty. I think that a lot of people that are running companies are really busy, not only want time with the business, but time with family, time, personal time, right? To do what they enjoy outside of the business because I think most people have a hobby or two, right? So it's a super high level answer. So thank you. And so to wrap up, if people want to connect with you or learn more about what Glendor is doing, where can they go and how can they connect?
Two places. One of them is our website. It's called
Of course.
glendor.com. And the other one is connect with me on LinkedIn. Let's talk
Perfect.
there.
Awesome.
And
So, yeah, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut
no,
you
go
off.
ahead. No, no, I was just saying, it's easy to find me.
Of
Uh,
course.
so, so please connect with me.
Awesome. I will leave her links in the description for her website, and I will also leave Julia's LinkedIn in the bottom if she's okay with that, so that you connect with her. And if you have any questions, you can relate them to her because I am sure that I would not be able to answer past the surface level, unfortunately. But I highly recommend you check out Glendor and the incredible things they're doing. in the space. The website is super interesting, even if you're outside of the healthcare space. But other than that, thank you again, Julia, for hopping on the podcast with me today and sharing your insights. And we'll see you guys in the next video.